When you think of the Everglades, you probably think of a vast, untamed wilderness full of stagnant swamps, slithering reptiles, and stinging insects. For the most part, that's an accurate description. Covering about 1.5 million acres, the Everglades is enormous. The watery landscapes teem with critters. Reptiles and insects are plentiful, as well as millions of fish, birds, and other wildlife. But the subtropical wetlands that define the Everglades bioregion are anything but stagnant. In fact, most people would be surprised to learn that the Everglades is actually considered to be an enormous, slow-moving river. In 1947, writer Marjorie Stoneman Douglas wrote a book that forever changed how we look at the Everglades. The Everglades, River of Grass, described an incredibly unique ecosystem full of toothy sawgrass and nurtured by a slow-moving river, 40 miles wide and over 100 miles long. But as Mrs. Douglas was writing her famous book, the Everglades was changing. Today we are dealing with the effects of an altered, unnatural system, but more on that in a minute. To understand how the River of Grass should work, we need to head way north. During the rainy season, rainfall in the higher central part of Florida fills a chain of lakes just south of Orlando. These lakes feed into the Kissimmee River, which flows south, dumping into the Great Lake Okeechobee. In its natural state, Lake Okeechobee would brim over during the rainy season, spilling the excess water over its southern rim. Now, instead of a deep, narrow channel like most riverbeds, the floor of the Everglades is a wide, relatively flat bed of limestone rock. We can see this most clearly during the dry season. This limestone foundation is covered with a layer of peat, or organic soil. This peat layer is thickest at the southern rim of Lake Okeechobee, and it thins out as it moves south, creating a gentle slope, dropping in elevation about 2 inches for every mile. Because of this gradual slope, the Everglades, the wide flowing river of grass, flows too slowly for us to even observe with our eyes, about half of a mile per day. We call this sheet flow. From an airplane or satellite image, however, we can see how this slow, steady movement of water has shaped the hammock islands that dot the Everglades into a flowing pattern of teardrop shapes. The Everglades is dominated by watery prairies and sawgrass marsh, about ankle to knee deep during the rainy season. Here and there we see tree islands on high ground, cypress domes in deeper areas, and ponds or sloughs where the water is deepest. As it nears its final destination, the Everglades becomes a maze of mangrove estuaries. The water here should be brackish, or a mixture of salt water from the sea and fresh water from the land. At last, the Everglades dumps its contents into Florida Bay and the Gulf of Mexico. And this is where the long journey ends for the Everglades, River of Grass. At least that's the way it's supposed to work. But as I mentioned earlier, the Everglades has been tampered with. Water, its lifeblood, no longer flows the way it should, and the Everglades is dying of thirst. This spells catastrophe for a place like Florida Bay, which is naturally a brackish estuary, a nursery ground for fish, and home to the largest meadows of seagrass in the world. Today, during periods of drought, Florida Bay can actually become saltier than the sea. This is exactly what happened in the summer of 2015, sending the system into shock and killing more than 50,000 acres of seagrass. What's next? Algae blooms, dead fish, and a fishing industry in crisis. No more than 8 months later, Florida experienced an unusually rainy winter. Lake Okeechobee filled to dangerously high levels, and billions of gallons of nutrient-rich water were dumped out to sea. This water didn't flow and filter through the River of Grass as it did for eons of time. Instead, it was pumped west through the Caloosahatchee River and east through the St. Lucie River. Dirty plumes of lake water now polluted the brackish estuaries of the west and east coasts. The result? Algae blooms, fish kills, and a fishing industry in crisis. So why is the plumbing all messed up? Well, over 100 years ago, an effort began to drain the water from the Everglades. Today, a vast network of canals, pumps, and locks are used to divert water away from the glades. leaving behind a huge area of dry, fertile ground, perfect for growing crops like sugarcane all year round. The Everglades Agricultural Area, or EAA as it is called, sits on what used to be the marshy beginning of the River of Grass. You'll remember that historically, Lake Okeechobee would overflow its southern rim, right where the Everglades Agricultural Area is today, giving birth to the River of Grass. That all stopped in the early 1900s with the construction of an earthen dam, later replaced by a massive wall that now almost completely surrounds the lake. The Herbert Hoover Dike is important for flood control. It protects thousands of residents in surrounding towns from deadly storm surges. Unfortunately, however, it also cuts off the main water supply to the River of Grass. Through Everglades restoration, fresh water flow can be restored to the River of Grass. This would relieve pressure from a dammed and swollen Lake Okeechobee, removing the need to pump that dark water out to sea. This would be accomplished in part by buying back portions of the Everglades Agricultural Area to create water storage and filter marshes south of Lake Okeechobee. The Everglades is a shadow of what it used to be, but it's incredibly important to us. The River of Grass recharges our aquifer, providing fresh water for more than 4 million people. It's also really important for our economy, attracting over 1 million visitors each year and supporting a $1 billion recreational fishing industry. These are just a few reasons why Everglades restoration has to happen.